So I normally start my conversation around the future of the country, and I'd like to ask my guests that if you look at where Nigeria is today, do you think we are on course to that great future that many of us believe is the destiny of our country?
Honestly, Nigeria is on the right path. And I'll be honest with you. If you look at the data from the past before we get to where we are, it will confirm to you Nigeria is currently on the right path to success. I don't want to go back so much on the trajectory, but let me just recall the fact that President Muhammadu Buhari, of blessed memory, printed 30 trillion naira.
Yeah, that's right.
So now, if you print 30 trillion naira, that is heavy money supply against outputs. What do you call that? Inflation. So you are allowed to print money. We call it ways and means.
Yeah.
Provided it's focused on capital projects.
Yeah.
Like if you print money to fix a Jakarta, fantastic. But where you print money to do the current expenditure, you have problem. So the aggregate opinion is that you have high money supply, less industrialization and outputs, then you get inflation. And you see this clearly in Latin America after the Second World War, and perhaps Argentina was a clear example. And what would that lead to? Food insecurity. So when you have food insecurity, you have what? Unemployment. And then you may have some insurgency if care is not taken. So this is what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inherited. But I told him then, publish the economic data as handed over to you. But he believes that it's the same party, leadership and all that. So he was going to manage situations. But I was wondering how he will manage 30 trillion printed. So we were almost at economic dangerous lane. So the data that was handed over to Bola Ahmed Tinubu was that you have 1% cash ratio to GDP. What does this mean? For whatever you want as a country, only 1% is in cash. And you assume duty as chief executive of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Why do you expect 99% cash to come? What will you? The only thing you can do is to sell your assets and convert to cash,
or take loans.
or take loans. Otherwise, you cannot use 1% debt ratio. Cash ratio to your GDP to manage the economy.
It's too small.
Too small. So the per capita income was poor. So clearly you are at the economic dangerous lane, I call it, and on one hand. On the other hand, Bola Ahmed Asuwaju, the president of Nigeria, was facing 11,886 abandoned federal projects. 3 of the projects is 60% of GDP, of the worth of the economy.
If it were delivered.
Three.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that if
so
it were
exactly,
delivered,
3 was just equivalent to 60% of what loan, of your debt. External debts.
Right.
So now you have them. At Jakarta, you spent $12 billion on there. You are on site for 42 years. You haven't produced one single iron, and you are still on site. Imagine a child born 42 years ago, and then is still choking the breast from the mother. It's quite very painful, isn't it? So you have Second Niger Bridge. You spent $7.6 billion there, but the bridge is 37% completed. You have SWOP, which was introduced by Jonathan, from the raking of the revenue from petrol. And you know that it doesn't have address. So if you want to test it, just call a taxi driver in Abuja and say you're going to touch SWOP office. Or what do you normally do? You use Uber. So put Uber in your app, in Abuja or your phone, and say, take me to SWOP head office. A project you spend $7.2 billion on, you should have a head office. So there was no head office. So if you look at these 3 projects and you add aggregate together, and you like $100 billion Nigeria is owing, so you know what this constitutes in percentage. And at the time I checked last, Nigeria then was owing about $70 billion. So this 3 project was almost about $32 billion from it. So we have 11,886 of church projects. Look at the National Library, add that on. That started about 18 to 20 years ago. No single book is in that library. The building has not been roofed. We spent over more than 1 or 2 trillion naira on that. And we cannot even continue because you have an agreement in that contract that says any equipment left on site if default in payment arose from the government deficiency or government lateness, then the equipment shall be converted to renter, and it will mean that the government have rented the equipment, and you pay the value of the renter before contractor can resume work. So you rented the equipment for how many years now? 20 years. The lease renter is more than the value of the project. When Jonathan came, I asked him the simple question, President Jonathan, and I said, why is it that you didn't complete the library project? He said, oh, Jim, when I came, you have a PhD, you should not be interested in the library. He said I was, but I told them to bring the file. And I said, this was designed to be a 13-story building. But you know what I want you to do now? Roof it where it is. Just roof it so that we can complete the library. And the cost they brought was more than the cost of taking the 13 floors. So he then says, I took my hands off, I'm not going to do this. Then I went to President Buhari when I was doing the thesis, and I asked, Mr. President, what's happening here?
Which thesis now?
Which what?
You said when you were doing the thesis.
Yeah, that was my thesis in PhD on management science.
Okay.
The doctorate from Cambridge.
Okay.
I was writing on mega project, why they succeed and why they fail. So I had to do interviews specifically to the president, and I went physically to the president to ask questions.
Okay.
So I asked these questions from the president.